Former President Trump has been very vocal about his plans for the DOJ under his new attorney general, whomever it may be. With Gaetz out of the picture, let's talk more about the woman taking his place, Pam Bondi, and much more. Our friend Donte Mills is a national trial attorney, law professor, up late with me tonight, live on the Final Five to talk about it all. Hey, Donte, good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Fetterman's reaction was worth me staying up late for sure.
So look, this was a topic I wanted to talk with you about Gaetz when the nomination came down. Clearly, that was only 8 days ago, and I was going to reach out to you today, and all of this happened. First of all, Matt Gaetz as a nominee for this job on paper, first reaction when you heard he was going down that route?
It's unfortunate. I'm an attorney, and I take pride in my craft and in my profession. And I want people to respect what we do and just the law in general. And when you have someone like that who has those type of questionable morals, I think you're putting you're putting our profession in jeopardy of people just saying whatever they do, we're not going to take it serious. We're not going to believe it. We're going to think everything has some kind of shade or tint on it. So I'm glad that he's no longer the nominee, because that position, Attorney General of the United States, it's a position about your character, right? You're judging people and deciding who to investigate, who to prosecute. Your character is important. Set aside the qualifications. He's a lawyer. You can question whether or not he can learn on the job, but your character is important, and he just didn't have that.
You heard earlier a congressman from Ohio named Warren Davidson who had said the results of the election signal that the American people didn't like the direction of the Department of Justice, that they were targeting people, that they were going after the likes of Donald Trump and his allies. Would you say that there is a fair amount of mistrust in our legal system as it stands right now?
I would hope that it's not as much as incoming President Trump likes to kind of put out there. And I know a lot of times he says some things and it comes across as exaggerated. I trust our system. I think the American people need to trust our system. So if incoming President Trump, who does have a mandate, he won the popular vote, he won this election, he'll be the next president, and he has the right to push forward his agenda. If cleaning house is something that he wants to do, he has the right to do that. But to do that with someone who is currently under investigation, I think that makes the entire process questionable. So I'm not suggesting at all that Trump doesn't have the right to make his choices, or that there doesn't need to be some kind of change or some kind of work done at the Attorney General's office. But was Gaetz the right person to lead that charge? I'm not sure about that.
Okay, so Pam Bondi, here's somebody who was an elected attorney general in Florida. She was a prosecutor out there. Clearly, she is a Trump ally. She defended him during his impeachment trial. But she does come to this position, if to be confirmed, with experience. And so far, we've learned not necessarily nearly the amount of baggage that Matt Gaetz had going into this nomination.
Absolutely. And this is what I was thinking all along. There are plenty of people out there, Bondi, one of them, who has the qualifications that incoming President Trump was looking for, is dedicated to him, is loyal to him. We know that Bondi, and back to 2016, was the one leading the charge on Lock Her Up. And then in 2020 was one of the ones staying in Pennsylvania and leading the charge about the election being rigged. So we know that she supports Donald Trump. She backs him. She's going to be loyal, and that's what he was looking for. She's an attorney. She's an attorney general. He has the right to pick her because he wants her to be loyal, but she doesn't come with that baggage. And I think that's a better situation just all around. Even for incoming President Trump, you don't want your investigations to be questioned. So somebody like Bondi that you know is going to push your agenda forward, but doesn't have all of that baggage, is a better pick. And I think she'll sell through the nomination process. She'll be confirmed.
And you know, Donte, one of the things that I've heard, I know a lot of Democrats have said they did not like I shouldn't say relationship, but the dynamic between President Biden and Merrick Garland. They think Merrick Garland was too hesitant to pursue some of what could have been President Biden's interests here. Does that sort of close relationship, is that a good thing legally?
Well, it depends on who you're asking. And we know that President Trump, when in his first time in office, he says his top 10 mistakes, his top 10 worst mistakes was appointing Jeff Sessions or nominating Jeff Sessions for Attorney General, because Jeff Sessions was not aligned with President Trump then, and they butted heads in a lot of what President Trump at the time wanted to do, Jeff Sessions pushed back on as Attorney General. So coming into this, you knew that incoming President Trump was going to want someone who was lockstep with his agenda and what he wanted to accomplish. I do think as president, you have the right to name your cabinet, and your cabinet should consist of people that you know will move your agenda forward. But you do want some people with some credibility and that will have some guardrails to say, maybe we shouldn't do this. And that's what Merrick Garland was known for doing. Jeff Sessions definitely did that. Hopefully, Bondi does that as well, and she doesn't go along with just any and everything because it's an important position.
Well, we're going to see what happens. Obviously, there's still a nomination battle, confirmation battle to be had. Donte Mills, thanks for staying up late, man. Always appreciate your help.
Always. Good to see you.
Final Five back right after this.